go right to conduct of business, item 10A. Adopt a resolution submitting a measure to the voters of San Bruno at the November 3rd, 2015 general municipal election to determine whether the positions of city clerk and city treasurer should be changed from elected to appointed, directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis of said measure, and authorizing submission of ballot arguments supporting the measure on behalf of the city council.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is an item tonight to place an initiative measure on the ballot, making the positions of the city clerk and the city treasurer appointive instead of elective. And this item was requested by a council member at last year's budget study session, who had requested that the item be considered for placement on the ballot before the 2017 election. And so that's why we're bringing it to you this evening. The first topic I'd like to address is what would be the reason to change the process from elective to appointed. And the short answer is that unlike other elected positions, such as yourselves on the City Council, to successfully meet the city's needs, both positions require highly specialized training and education, as well as experience. And unlike members of the City Council, neither of those positions is a policy-making role. The only requirement right now in state law for those positions is that a person be over the age of 18 and be a qualified voter in the city of San Bruno. And also under state law, the city can't impose any additional requirements in order, if those positions continue to be elected. So it's possible that the city could be at great risk if an unqualified person were to be elected to either position. Neither the city council nor the city manager could really take any action to remedy that situation. So that's the main reason for the trend we see in other cities, both across the state and in San Mateo County. Across the state, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the cities have appointed clerks and treasurers. So the vast majority. In San Mateo County, out of 19 general law cities, that's like us, only 3, other than the city of San Bruno, elect the clerk, and only 4 elect the treasurer. So those are in the distinct minority. The question might be, what are the implications of appointing the city clerk and city treasurer instead of electing them? And here's how that would work. If the ordinance were submitted to the voters and were they to vote in favor of it by a majority, the city council would then have the authority to appoint those 2 positions. The city council could also later adopt an ordinance authorizing the city manager to appoint those positions. And they could also authorize the city manager to transfer the treasurer duties to the finance director for operational efficiency. And actually, in the latter case, what's happened is, I think all but one of the cities in San Mateo County who have gone from elected to appointed treasurers have then transferred those duties to the finance director. The one exception is Portola Valley. They, for some reason, transferred those duties to the county. I'm not sure why. But in any event, those functions have been merged with the finance director. And that's really with the realization that the duties of the treasurer are well related to and integral to what the finance director is doing with respect to budgeting, expenditure of funds, and then also the investments. The one thing that won't or that would not change if the city council does put this on the ballot and it's approved is the city council would still set the salaries for those positions. So if the city council would like to make this change, how would that be accomplished? So the government code requires that the matter be placed on the ballot, so a majority vote to a simple yes or no question. And that question is, should those 2 offices be appointive? And under the government code, the 2 offices can be combined in one ballot question. If you want to put it on the ballot for the next election in November, you have to take an action by August 7th. So that's the very latest date. We're bringing it to you a little bit early, so you have some time. If the city council were interested in making this change, it's best to do it at this upcoming election, so the ordinance would be effective before the terms of the current city clerk and city treasurer expire. The packet that you have in front of you contains the resolution placing the measure on the ballot, authorizing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis, and then authorizing submission of ballot arguments in favor of the measure on behalf of the city council, similar to what you did for Measure N, placing that on the ballot. It's the same process. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mark?
Through the chair.
Michael?
Would it, what would change if we were to say we wanted to have each of the offices voted on individually?
So you could do that. You could place two questions on the ballot. You know, should the position of city clerk be appointed? Then the second question would be, should the position of city treasurer be appointed? You could do that.
Would that change the cost of the election?
I'd have to ask Carol that. I don't
I think
think
the
so.
election would stay, the cost would stay.
Okay. And are we on track to have this year be a mail-only election?
So far, we haven't heard from the county to the contrary, but every city in the county has to do a resolution like we did in order for it to go.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ken?
I don't have a question for this. I'd like to know why, other than why. You've answered the question on why cities change from appoint, from elect to appoint. We've got a 100-year-old city, and so you're saying now that it's specialized, and now that we need experience after 100 years, that we should change. And so I guess my question is to my colleagues or colleagues that would like to propose this change, is that why, and what is wrong? Obviously there's something wrong with the current situation, and then I also like to chime in as we're talking two very different offices, a city clerk and a city treasurer. So I don't believe that it should be one yes handles both, one yes or no handles both positions. So I just want to know why.
All right, I'll give you my 2 cents. I think we've been very fortunate the last numbers of years since I've been on the council to have people that are responsible and willing to learn and know their stuff. But I've read before about other cities where the same thing happens and they don't have responsible people in place. You actually have to hire somebody to do the work, because maybe the clerk doesn't want to keep the minutes, the clerk doesn't want to show up, the treasurer doesn't do his or her job. So I've been saying this for an awful long time, and I believe, based on what I've seen in my discussions, that our clerk and our city treasurer even support this measure, because I think they see the potential to cause a city a lot of grief and financial harm going forward if we happen to get somebody who's very popular but doesn't know what they're doing. So I think it's important to make the switch now.
Through the chair.
Irene?
I echo what you said. I've also had experience with several other cities that have had the same thing happen to them. In fact, a friend of mine who is a financial advisor was hired by a city close to us for over 2 years to help out the treasurer that was elected. And when that person finally said, I have to go on to my other job, the elected treasurer just quit because they never learned what they were supposed to do. So it's we have been fortunate. We have had very good city clerks and city treasurers, but it can be a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get, and those positions are getting more and more complicated and more important as we go on. So that's my 2 cents as well.
Anyone else? Rico?
So, and again, maybe it's just, again, the change of it. I'm trying to understand, too, if it's appointed by the city council, I worry about, does it become more political? If we have an election every 2 years and the makeup of the city council changes, does that mean then we easily can, by 3 votes, take out the appointed city treasurer and city clerk? There's a city that's just filed a recall, not around here. It's been in the news for some unfortunate stuff. So we're now going to have the impartial clerk, who would be appointed by the city council to deal with a potential recall or elections as the elections officer. I like the neutrality. I like the independence. I think that concerns me. If the city treasurer had a concern with something that he or she felt, but it's under the direction of us or the day-to-day operations of the city manager, would they be free to come forward and say at that podium, I've got a concern? We had a city treasurer that resigned because they thought things could have been different or better. It goes back a ways, and we've been fortunate, and I agree. I do remember a time, not this city manager, not this city clerk that's here today, that it came down to the city clerk, the city manager saying, I want this done. The city clerk said, no. I'm responsible for the keeping of the books, the resolutions, and the minutes. So now at that point, the city clerk, if they said no, could be for insubordination, and therefore there's disciplinary action. The independence to me is, I do know that when they call City Hall, they get an office that is elected by the people, that person gets to appoint their deputy city clerk, and they answer to just them. So though I can understand that things have changed, and we talk about how the rest of the trend of the county is going, but we have a very unique trend where we're the only one, and that's the directly elected mayor. So to be unique, nothing wrong with it. But I have concern with some of the other issues I've brought up about its impartiality, independence, and it answering to us up here, which becomes, again, now political.
Okay. Anyone else? Michael?
Through the chair. I had similar questions, and I feel like a lot of the activities, a lot of the decisions made by those offices are regulated by the state, and so there's not a lot of latitude, for those people. Even if somebody thought they could make it a political move, there's really a lot of constraints around what they do, and so I don't think it would be as big a concern to me. I think that over 100 years, the positions have become a lot more technical. With technology coming in, with all the regulations, every year there's more and more regulations that apply to these things. The financial markets get more complicated. I think that there really is a need to have more qualifications around the position, other than just 18 years old and a resident. So that's why I think that it's a good time right now to put it to the voters to make a decision on whether or not they want to move forward on this. And our current treasurer right now was appointed, so and he's been doing a great job. I don't think there's been any issues with. Well, technically, yes. Technically, yeah.
Anything else?
I just
Irene?
I just want to point out that one of the options is to have the person appointed by the city clerk, by the city council, to have the city clerk or the city treasurer appointed by the city council. That is just an option for afterwards. We can look at doing that differently. I agree with Michael. We've had appointed city treasurers. Well, the city treasurer that won the election that you're referring to, if I'm thinking of the right one, had the opportunity to come to a council meeting and tell us their opinion about what they felt was wrong, and did not take it. So I don't think that's a particularly strong argument for not having an appointed treasurer. As I said, we're extremely fortunate that the person that we appointed, that had to go through it just went out of my brain. Had to go through a process, a discussion process, an interview process, did know what they were doing, and did take the time to learn, and it does the job very well. But you never know if anybody who can do that is willing to even run. So I don't want to keep taking those chances myself.
Okay. Anything else, Ken? Did you get your answers?
Yeah, no, I'm listening to people from the dais, but I don't think I think it came, the request came from the dais, and now we're looking at proposing a ballot measure, and we've given no opportunity to the public. I would like to propose that we at least get a notice out to the public somehow to ask them the question, because it's the voters who are going to be affected by by this, and to just put it on the ballot and just and spring it on them for when they see their sample ballot or when they go to the polls is I think it's irresponsible to give that responsibility, to take that responsibility and not give them the opportunity. I did some research on it, and yes, Burlingame was the last city to have a ballot measure to appoint the city clerk, and it won by 356 votes. Antioch did last year, November of 14, and it won 51% to 49%. Then there's been some losses. Antioch lost. Antioch, they overturned it 71% to 29%. It was, I believe, in Southern California, La Mesa, that was a 51 to 49. Those are the three that I could find in the last 2 years. So I think it's something that, yes, let's let the democratic process go out there, but it's almost like we're not giving it the full promotion. We're just going to put it on the ballot and see how it flies. So I don't think that the voters, my opinion, would appreciate it that way.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Medina?
Marty Medina, Garden Avenue. As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, would Carol have this seat? Would she be appointed? Would she have a chance? And taking the San Bruno residents the opportunity to run for that position and making it appointed, I think it's shying away from the independence of that position. So we've been very fortunate to have her, as well as our other clerks, and you're taking away something from the people. It's now going to be appointed instead of voted on. It's not right, and if you're going to do it, then split them up. Let the people decide on the clerk, and let the people decide on the treasurer. Thank you.
Let me just make a comment. You say we're taking something away from the people. We're not taking anything away. We're putting the vote to the people to see what they'd like to do. And there's nothing to say that, and when you mentioned Carol, I'll just use Carol as an example. If in fact it was appointed, there's nothing to say she could not apply to be appointed. I mean, that's she decided to run because that was an elected position. Going forward, who knows? Maybe she'll want to stay. I don't know. Yeah. Yes.
Russ Steins, Reed. I don't think it's a good idea for you guys to put that even put it on the ballot. I don't think that taking a position that's voted on by the people and putting it in council members' hands and or the city manager's hands is a really great idea. I mean, you guys are all great people and everything, but you all been together, a lot of you been together for 20 years plus, and you're good friends, and it seems to me that position is a spirited, free-spirited position that the people vote on it, and the people get the choice, and so therefore I think you guys should just leave it the way it is. Thank you.
Okay.
And while the speaker comes up, I just also want one comment that has come up is that if you appoint, then you're not obligated to fill the position with a resident. Because elected, you must be a resident of the city. So if you appoint, then you take that restriction off.
I just want to say that before I became city clerk, and the first time I tried to be city clerk was in 1989, I had an extensive background in lots of things. When I became city clerk in 2005, I thought I knew everything. I knew nothing. This job is not an easy job. It's a very hard job. And if there's a mistake made, it's me that's going to be in the newspaper. That's for sure. If your minutes aren't correct, it's me that's going to be at point. And that's where you need to have a qualified person. You need to have someone that has a background in government and understands what's happening. And that's my only argument, that I really do believe it needs to be appointed.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
I think the council members have made some of the best pro and con arguments on this. I will agree with the idea that the vote should be divided into one vote for the treasurer and one vote for the clerk. The treasurer is something that I would expect to have both study and practice behind them on the subject. For the clerk, I think the clerk is a key function in making information equally and fairly available to the public at all times. And my experience has been with Terry Rasmussen and Carol. The information has been that way. If the clerk is appointed, I think that it introduces a substantial political aspect into it, a concern about whether the way or the speed or the kind of information that's available is going to be completely fair. I have that experience myself now. From time to time, when I ask for information, I can get it very quickly. Other times I present what seems to me to be a relatively simple request through the formal Freedom of Information Act procedure. I don't get the information within the statutory specified time, and the information I do get doesn't really answer the question I wanted. So the idea of getting that information through the city clerk more directly, I think, would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think it's not a bad idea to have the people vote on it. If they feel that's not right, more power to them. Thank you.
Russ Steins, Reed, I know, sorry, Mayor.
Make it quick.
Just one quick thing. Isn't it possible to just put qualifications for the city clerk when they go to run? Can't you guys just do some kind of thing up there and give qualifications for certain qualifications, got to be whatever that's needed for a city clerk, and then still leave it to where we vote? Thank you.
The way it is now, well, Mark, go ahead.
No, I'll just answer that question because it's an easy one. Unfortunately, the answer is no. State law prohibits the city from imposing any qualifications on those positions when they're elective.
Okay. John?
Well, first of all, let me apologize for my casual attire. It's not normally how I want to address the
At least
council.
it's Giants attire,
Yes.
that's fine.
Sometimes a council meeting gets in the way of baseball. As someone who, well, first of all, Mark, you just answered my question on qualifications. Someone who's 18 and a resident of San Bruno describes a lot of us. I thought maybe we could impose some sort of qualification, but apparently we cannot. Because I do feel that understanding the difference between a debit and a credit might be a prerequisite, but and some of us who are 18 and a resident, through no fault of their own, may not understand that, but be that as it may. As someone who went through the appointment process, I want to address Mr. Medina's comment of a moment ago. I was vetted, so there was a process by which I did come to this position. I don't think it was just a name pulled out of a hat. Filled out an application, background was checked. I understood that part. I think you can, the council can put someone through a process of a vetting process. The counterpoint that I feel should be made is this. I think in the future, you could potentially put a council and a treasurer in an awkward position, should it be appointed. Because you can end up being a situation where a treasurer, who is an internal auditor at its basic core position, at odds or in conflict with the people who appointed them. So it works both ways. However, the vetting process can ensure that you get the right person in. The voters vote in the council and the mayor, so you can trust the voters to put the right people in to do the vetting process. But I just wanted to point out the potential for a conflict of interest down the road. That's what I just wanted to make clear. So,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, John and Carol. Mark, let me just ask you, we can't put qualifications on an elected clerk or treasurer at this point in time, but we could appoint a clerk or treasurer with a list of qualifications before they even apply?
That's right. You can, if the voters were to say this position or the other is appointive, then you can set what those qualifications are.
All right. Thank you. Okay, any more discussion or action by the council?
I'll introduce the resolution with the caveat that each position be separated on the ballot.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
No.
Councilmember Ibera.
No.
Okay, thank you.